Hello, and welcome to the Social Security Show. I'm Daniel Summer, Public Affairs Specialist in the Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana area. And I've got a special guest today. But first, I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about. You know, ever since last month in August, and there was a huge breach, my Dear Mr. Social Security inbox has been flooded. Phone calls have been coming in because there being a national data breach. Now, it didn't occur with the Social Security Administration. Nevertheless, millions of Social Security numbers and other information was potentially exposed. Because of the potential damage, I did what I had to do. I reached into my bag of tricks that I have here in Chicagoland, and guess what I did? I pulled up an expert. And so I'd like to introduce our guest today, or rather, I'd like to say, I'd like my guest to introduce herself. Victoria?
Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria Jackson Davis. I work at the Public Affairs Office in Chicago as a Public Affairs Specialist, and we are here today to talk about identity theft.
Thank you very much. But Victoria, you're being a little too humble for us, so I want to know just a little bit more about how long you've been at Social Security and what kind of jobs or positions you've held so that every one of our viewers will understand your level of expertise on what we're talking about today.
I've been working with the agency, Social Security Administration, for over 30 years. I have started at the Program Service Center as a benefit authorizer. I have also worked in the field office, face-to-face interviews, taking application, things of that sort. And now I'm in the Public Affairs Office, bringing all my knowledge together and enforcing some information that will be useful to the public.
That's going to be of great use to us today, and I appreciate you coming on the show. And now, I just mentioned that we had a data breach. And it wasn't with us at Social Security. It was with a national data clearinghouse. But again, if Social Security numbers are exposed, that makes it our business, right?
That is correct.
So we're going to talk first. We know how this happened, but there are other ways that people lose their information or it gets in the hands of fraudsters and scammers, right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Now, because that's the case, can you tell me another way that people get a hold of Social Security information that they can use to exploit a person's credit, etc.?
Sometimes a person can contact you by phone stating that they're working for an organization or for the Social Security Administration, and they may ask for your Social Security number and your name and your date of birth to gain access. Sometimes they state that they're from your bank or send some information through your email, and the imposters will get your information and misuse your information through medical or obtaining credit or creating an account. And once this is done, this can harm your credit and you're not realizing that this has been done until it's too late or you receive a letter or something like that in the mail.
That's interesting information. Now, I'd like to talk to you just a second about those phone calls because they've been coming in. I've literally received a phone call. Here I am, the public affairs guy who's in Chicagoland, who explains to people about fraud, and I've received phone calls from people saying, I'm from the Social Security Administration. I need some information from you. I mean, if they'll target me, they'll target anyone. So these phone calls, they're an epidemic right now?
Yes, they are. I just spoke to a person last week, and she was stating that someone has stated that they were from the Social Security Administration, and she was about to give them her information, her mother's maiden name and her Social Security number. But then she realized she did not contact the Social Security. And she was just wondering out of the blue, why would someone from Social Security contact her and she give them this information? So she decided that she will contact the local Social Security office just to verify if someone was indeed trying to contact her to get her information to establish a claim.
Very smart of her, because we at Social Security rarely, if ever, call people out of the blue. Now, I understand if someone has recently filed an application, made an inquiry, we'll often communicate with them. But what you're saying is we don't just say, I feel like calling Victoria today and ask her Social Security number. I don't think that happens because we gave it to you in the first place. And that's a red flag. if someone asks for that information, obviously they're not with Social Security if they're calling you. Now, at times, if you call our offices, of course, we're going to need that to identify you, to verify what case. But it would make no sense for us to call you, knowing your phone number, and ask you for your Social Security number. Now, another thing that I noticed you said, kind of email, and that's interesting to me because there's a lot of this social engineering going on, phishing. Can you speak to me a little bit about that? Because I understand, and this is what I know, that people will often set it up so that it's geared toward your tastes or whatever, or your information, and then they'll try to send something that you might be interested in order to gather more information about you. Could you speak on that for me?
Well, as I stated before, a lot of times they will use it by banks if they believe that you are affiliated at a certain bank or something like that. Your information could be on the dark web. And by being on the dark web, they try to pinpoint certain organizations or businesses to obtain that information. A lot of times they can get the same prototype of your bank or with the Social Security Administration to get this information so you can establish as if they are who they say they are when they are not.
Another good warning to check those website addresses because they often mock them and then there's something wrong. There's a number in it. It's spelled differently. And you have to watch those emails because I know that there are times when the English will be poor. But if we're just skimming through things and we assume it's from our bank and we see the logo, we might give up some information that could be harmful to us in the long run. Now, you said that your information could be on the dark web. Now, I know that information goes for sale on the dark web. If you've got a name and a Social Security number, it goes for one price as opposed to the name, the Social Security number, and the mother's maiden name and the address. So what do we do? I mean, if your information is already out there, there's no way to just delete it, but we can find out if it's there. So what are some methods that we can use to say, well, how do I know if my data is out there?
Well, one method we always suggest is to contact your creditors to verify from TransUnion, Experian, just to name a few, to see if there's anything suspicious on your credit report. A lot of times we also, if you think something's being suspiciously done to your information, you can contact OIG as well, or the Trade Commissioner, just to make sure that there's nothing is going on. Sometimes people also file a police report to make sure they have enough information established so that if something does come up, they can have something on file that they were trying to pursue this correction to their record.
Very interesting. Now, I noticed that your information gets from sometimes people calling you, they gather information from the dark web, data breaches like the one that was just occurred in August, but just, it doesn't always have to be some sophisticated internet situation, does it? No. I mean, we have data laying around in our doctor's offices. If someone wants to fill out a credit application, that's a piece of paper. Are those risky?
Oh, of course they are. A lot of times we hear that there have been a data breach at hospitals. I recently got one for my son stating that there was a data breach and for me to contact the creditors. So it can be from a variety of businesses. You can accidentally lose your Social Security card, for example, and someone get enough information to use it to establish credit or medical against your Social Security number, or use it for an employment as well.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk about what happens when criminal A or criminal B gets a hold of your Social Security number, what people really do with it. I mean, of course, there are going to be people who will file that credit application, right?
That is correct.
But I mean, there are other things like, for instance, tax fraud. Don't we have that?
Mm-hmm. Tax refunds, they use it to open up utility accounts, maybe establish for a loan, medical care. and just simply opening up a credit card as some of the examples that they will use your credit for, or your social security number.
That's a great point. I also want to mention that when you have people, it would be terrible for me to go, I work all year for the Social Security Administration, and then I'm going to get my tax refund and I go to file for it and then they say we've already issued a refund for you. That happens.
That is correct.
Okay, now let me ask you something else, because people sometimes can work under another person's Social Security number, and for purposes, for example, there have been a few people who've been caught doing this. Someone's working under one number and receiving some sort of benefit. It could be TANF, SNAP benefits, or even disability under another. Have you seen that type of fraud before?
Yes, I have, and a lot of times they don't understand how that person has obtained their Social Security number to get the information. So that's why sometimes we suggest to create an account, verify your wages, make sure everything is okay, or the wages that's posted to your record. Because a lot of times, again, you won't find out until IRS sends something to you stating that you aren't able to get your tax refund, or you get something from the state of Illinois or whatever state that you live in stating that we're unable to approve your application because this number is already being in use.
Okay, that's a pretty important point, and it'd be tragic if that happens to someone. Also, though, you have individuals who might want to avoid their legal problems, traffic tickets. Have you ever seen that kind of a situation occur? Because I know that I have.
Maybe once or so for maybe a traffic ticket. Those who use your number are trying to avoid themselves. They want to put their trouble on someone else, and to their advantage, if they can use your name, your address, your Social Security number to their advantage, they will do so at all costs, because they feel like the cost is not on them, it's on the victim.
I've seen situations where an individual gets pulled over and they've got all these supposed legal problems. They're not the individual, but there's been some kind of license in their name, there's a bunch of tickets, and maybe even more serious crimes. So these are the things that people do once they obtain your Social Security number. As you said, by the various methods, whether they get it because I left my card out and somebody took it, whether there's some place of employment where someone maybe pays an employee or grabs your information off of a document, or even if, no matter how they obtain that information, they use it for these things. That's pretty frightening, and it can leave you holding the bag. So I want to ask you a little bit more about the consequences to a person who is the victim of that kind of thing. What kind of situations, besides potentially getting in real trouble and going to jail, which I don't want, could happen? I mean, I like cars. I might say, let me go get a shiny new car. And what happens?
You won't be able to obtain it because it'll be some type of negative report on your credit. Also, a lot of times we realize those who are trying to purchase their first home and not understanding that why I've been paying my bills on time, I cleaned out my debt, and they're unable to purchase homes, cars, anything of some type of luxury where you would need to get a loan for over a period of time. Will block that from you from getting that.
So you have a decline in your credit reputation and your credit score. I know, because I've gone through something similar. I had a debt collector harass me, and if you ever have that happen, you're not happy about it. I'm sure that happens as a result of the credit cards that you mentioned that people file in someone's name, and then of course they're not going to pay them. Right. They're going to just charge up as much as they can and then leave you holding the bag. What occurred here was that there was a debt collector that said that I owed a phone bill for a phone that I never got, and phones are pretty popular with this. Someone had gotten a hold of some information. They got my Social Security number. However, the debt collector to whom the bill was sold did not care that my date of birth was wrong. They didn't have that. My address was wrong. They didn't have that. My phone number was wrong. They didn't have any of my identifying information. But nevertheless, when that debt was sold to a debt collector, they harassed me. And I had to go through extreme measures in order to find out, like, okay, well, what's the information you have? Because they were not going to give it to me because they knew that they had the wrong information. That didn't stop them from pursuing the real Daniel Summer for the debt of someone else. So the debt collector harassment, we always think, Victoria, that I'll just tell them it wasn't me and that'll clear it up. But what happens there?
It will continue to harass you until they feel like you will pay them what is owed to them.
So they don't care who they get the money from?
No, they don't. They just want to get paid.
This often leads to lawsuits?
At times it will, if you can afford an attorney or some type of a lawyer to assist you in this matter. Again, a lot of people will try to contact the creditors to make sure no new establish of credit is trying to get on their account under their Social Security number.
But what happens, though, is often the lawsuit is against the victim, so they get double victimized because someone wants to collect money. I've seen a situation where someone's credit, not their credit, their bank account was frozen because they were being sued for something. Now, that could lead to a hardship, especially if you've got rent to pay, kids to feed, etc. So all kinds of nasty consequences through something that may not be your fault at all.
That is true. So a lot of times we will hear that they don't have the money because they don't have access, and how they have to maybe find another job or see if they can borrow money. And as you know, these times they is unable to do so just until they can get the situation straightened out. And sometimes the situation can take years in order for it to be straightened out.
I'm glad you mentioned getting another job because a lot of jobs will run your credit score. So you're putting me in a bad situation here, Victoria. I'm already the victim of somebody taking my Social Security number and charging up a whole lot of stuff. I can't get away with it, and I'm being harassed by debt collectors. They're calling my phone constantly. Now, if I decide to try to pay it off, trying to get a job, if the new job runs my credit scores and they see all this debt, I mean, that's often a factor in new employments and hires now, right?
That is true.
I mean, I think even at Social Security, don't they check things?
Yes, they will. So my advice will be to definitely reach out to OIG.gov and do a report, explain the information, what has happened. A lot of times they will look into your case to see if there's some type of record of the ongoing same thing, same person, same situation, where they can see if they can catch the person that's causing you to be a victim of all of this.
You know, when I hear all those things, it sounds like a nightmare, but the number one question I'll get, and I'm going to ask it to you instead of answering it myself, is, well, if all that happened with my Social Security number, why don't you, Victoria, just give me another number? Isn't that easy?
That's not quite as easy as getting a new Social Security number. A lot of times when you get a new Social Security number, it have to be, completely establish a new identity. For identity theft, we normally will not give another Social Security number. Even if you received a new Social Security number, the old number still will be with you regardless. So that's not going to change that much for you.
And also, a lot of things are tied up in that number. Now, the original purpose of the Social Security number was just to follow your wages, right?
That is correct.
It wasn't supposed to be used for credit. It wasn't supposed to be used for ID. But the rest of the universe grabbed on to the Social Security number. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But if we just followed what they did in 1935, we wouldn't have a problem. So if I decide, well, I need a new Social Security number, and you won't give it to me, I would imagine that if I had a new number and I could wipe the other one away magically, well, what about all my educational and medical records and jobs that I've held? All of that stuff would be lost. So is that the reason why they don't want to issue numbers so easily?
No, I mean, all that information still can be transferred over to you. It's just that if we did it for one, there'd be millions of others we will have to do it for. 1 out of 5 persons are victimized in identity theft. So to give a new Social Security number, that will be too much for us in order to establish a new number for 1 out of every 5.
So even if I wanted to escape my criminal past or something, the Social Security number would kind of help make sure that I don't get away with it. Is that the...
No, because even though if you get a new Social Security number, the old number is still linked to you.
So that's why somebody wants to use your Social Security number.
That is correct.
You're a non-criminal.
Right.
Got it. So now let's talk a little bit about protecting yourself. So should I carry my card, Victoria?
No, you should never, ever carry your Social Security card. There's no need for it. If you lose your card and with your ID, you are giving that person enough information to be you, and that's something we are trying to stop.
You mentioned to check my credit reports. I mean, regularly or?
I would say at least every 6 months to a year, at least every year. Check your credit report, make sure there's nothing outstanding on your report that you have not purchased.
And this thing about freezing your credit report, I understand that that makes it unavailable to people to look at, which they won't extend credit without looking at it. So that's one way of blocking people off?
Yes, that's one way, but it usually only lasts for about a year or so. And you may forget and decide you want to purchase a car or a home, and that will negatively affect the decision of you getting those purchases if you keep that block on your credit.
Well, how about investigating companies before I just say, well, I'll go apply for credit with them? Maybe read the reviews to see if they say, hey, as soon as I applied here, somebody stole my credit.
Well, with review companies, that will be a decision up to you. Social Security cannot advise whether or not if you should go with a company, but we just suggest that, leave your Social Security card at home. Try to protect your Social Security number as much as possible. Do not answer any calls or emails giving out your information. The more you protect your Social Security number, the better you are. And if you find some information or thinking your Social Security number has been used in any kind of way, just make sure you call your creditors, verify that information, and just be proactive in making sure that your number is not being used.
That's solid advice. I want everyone to go to www.ssa.gov and create an online account, because there can only be one using your Social Security number and your name, and you want to be the one in control of that. That blocks off yet another avenue for fraudsters to look at and obtain and, unfortunately, steal your information. Also, if you find yourself the victim of any type of cybercrime, there is the Internet Crime Center at www.ic3.gov. That's right, www, the letter I, the letter C, the number 3.gov. That is where you report if your information has been used in a fraudulent manner. If you suspect that someone is using your Social Security number, whether for working under it, whether for tax purposes, whether to open a credit card, that Cybercrimes Clearance Center is a great thing to do. Understand and know, report it so we can shut all of these fraudsters down. Victoria, I'd like to thank you for your contributions today. Your 3 decades or more of experience has helped make all of us wiser. I'm Daniel Summer for the Social Security Show. We will see you next time.